Welcome to Books and Banter podcast. My name is Marcia Spence, and I am your host for this show and also the director of Marcia M Publishing House. My special guest for this show is Richard Armstrong, the author of Bulletproof Corset, One Man's Struggles in the Police. Welcome, Richard.
Hello, Marcia. Hi, folks. How you doing?
Yeah, how are you? How are you, Richard?
Pretty
How you
good,
feeling?
thanks. Yeah, not
Pretty
too bad.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, fabulous, fabulous. Okay, so I want to find out more. I'm sure the listeners want to find out more about this book, about this one man's struggles in the police. But my first question is the title, Bulletproof Corset. How did you come about that title?
Well, there's a lot of sort of humor in the police, and one of the things that if you have to wear a body armor under your clothes for 8, 10, 12 hours, 15 hours sometimes, it's very tight fitting and it feels like a corset, and
Okay,
it rides up and it's very uncomfortable. And someone came up with the joke once that it was like wearing a bulletproof corset.
Bulletproof Corset.
So I thought that was kind of fun,
Yeah,
amusing.
absolutely. Absolutely. So that's one of the kind of in jokes within the police. And yeah, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And is it very tight? I mean, I'm a woman and I know that there are times when I have to wear a girdle or Spanx or something. And I know that after a while I need to take it off because if I eat, if I'm sitting down, it is so uncomfortable. So, yeah, so how does it actually feel when you have that bulletproof vest on?
Well, this is the way they used to have it in the old days when I was in, and it feels very restrictive. It's a solid piece on the front and the back, and there's elasticated bits around the side, and
Mm-hmm.
you wear a t-shirt underneath it, and it actually does sort of stick to your chest and your back
All
as
right.
you move around.
Wow. And it must be really hot as well.
Yeah, in the summer it's very unpleasant. One of the things we used to do was just pull it open back and then sort of let the warm air flow up past your face. And when you sat down in the car, your
Mm,
belt would hit the
yeah.
bottom of the vest and shove it up under your chin.
Okay. I understand that as well. I think many females would definitely understand that. Anyway, so Richard, I understand you're from a policing family. Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, yeah, my great grandfather was a police officer. My grandfather
Mm,
was a police officer. My great uncle was a police officer.
wow.
Um, my godfather and several of my family's friends and family friends.
Friends.
Um, And my mother grew up actually in a police station because in those days, back in the 40s, they had some of the police officers used to live on in the police station, and they
Oh,
had a
wow.
flat above the police station, and she grew up in a police station.
Wow, that's amazing. So policing is literally in your DNA and in your blood.
Yeah.
However, it wasn't your first choice occupation, was it? What did you do before?
Well, I always wanted to be in the police, but I kind of got sidetracked by playing music in rock bands in the 20s, and I really enjoyed that, and
Mm-hmm.
that was a lot of fun. And then, unfortunately, my father passed away and had to uh, sort of take a different path.
Okay.
And I sort of worked with various different jobs, and then uh, ended up going to America, traveling around, um,
Mm-hmm.
coming back, and a chance conversation with one of our friends in the pub. He suggested I do a degree, and when I stopped laughing, he said,
Okay.
"No, no, off you go." After a few
Do a
drinks, it
degree.
sounded like a great idea.
Okay, fabulous. So let's just go back to the music because you said music was your passion and
Yeah,
you played. So what did you play? What type of music?
rock music, so sort of stuff that was
Oh
around in the
wow.
80s.
Okay. And you're in a rock band and you toured?
Yeah, we went to did various gigs up and down the country, and quite a few in London, and a bit of recording and things. So yeah, it was really good fun.
Oh wow, wow. And then so no wonder after kind of that life of a rock star, your friend suggesting your friend suggesting you, I'm assuming that then there wasn't like a real solid, steady stream of income in that in being a rock star. So then your friend said, "Why don't you do a degree?" And so you went on, and then what degree did you do, and then what did you go on to do with it?
Well, I managed to talk my way into a course to do science, biology. So it's human
Ah,
physiology was really what I studied.
okay, okay, fabulous, fabulous. So I've read your book. I've read it a few times, and I have learned, I suppose, a lot about you, Richard, and a lot about the what happens in the training of police, in the day-to-day work of the police, um, and actually the toll that policing in general can take on a police officer. And I'd like you to kind of just tell us a bit about you decided to become a police officer. Tell me about the training and what kind of hoops did you have to jump through to actually become a police officer?
Well, after the selection procedure in which you have to do written exams and pass a physical, you do, well, certainly when I was in, we did 6 months, 18 weeks basically at Hendon Police Training College.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you have an exam every week, which is a 70% pass mark. And
Okay.
so there's lots of written work to do in terms of learning the law. So each week you learn a different section of the law.
Okay.
At the same time, you do physical things like sort of keep yourself fit.
Mm-hmm.
You do role play work, so you act out how to deal with certain situations.
Okay.
It's video recorded and stuff. And after the 6 months sort of basic training like that, you
Mm-hmm.
then go on and do another 18 months as a probationer. And then once you've got through all those 2 years, if everyone's happy and you're happy, they confirm you as a constable, and you then move on to become a sort of a fully trained police officer.
Okay. So when you're doing that 18 months probation, is that what you call, what's that, a rookie? What do you call you there? You're a probationer.
Yeah, but the rookie is sort of an American term, but
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, probie, or that
A
sort of
probie.
probationer.
Okay.
Uh,
A probationer.
yeah, then
Uh,
if you're a bit if you answer back like I used to, they'll call you
yes.
a gobby probby.
A gobby bobby. Okay. So during that probationer period as a gobby bobby, you were out on the field. So tell me about your first arrest, please. So I'm assuming that you'd arrest during that 18 months.
Yeah. The first one I did on, because you do a short period of what they call street duties, where you don't
Mm-hmm.
go onto your team, you just sort of get general background. And the first one was uh, in those days. I don't know how much they do it nowadays, but we had if someone is drunk, if they're drunk and incapable of looking after themselves, i.e., they're passed out, wandering
Yeah.
around through traffic, to not capable of looking after themselves,
Yeah.
we used to bring them and take them into custody just to make sure they don't step in front of a car or someone doesn't rob
Okay.
them and stuff. And there was a guy passed out uh, on the side of the street. We
Mm-hmm.
came across him, and you have to check whether or not it's through if there's some sort of medical condition.
Okay.
Um, and then once you've found out that they're actually drunk because they stink of alcohol,
Okay.
then I arrested him. I took away his liberty. I mean, to be fair, I don't think he was even aware that I was doing it because he was
Okay.
so drunk. But we took him off the streets to let him
To
sleep it
make,
off in the cells.
and was that to make him safe?
Yeah, that's exactly
Okay.
that. So that no
Okay.
one robbed him, or if he sort of came round, he wouldn't step up, walk in front of a car or something.
Okay. So you had to learn the law, and you'd have to know, how to safely actually arrest someone or do that, how to. So what's the legal stance in terms of making someone safe who's drunk and on the street?
Well, it's drunk and incapable. It's an arrestable offence. You take someone into custody to, as I said, just to make sure that they're okay. That's the sort of the legal position on it. And what we used to do is just let them release them in the morning once they'd sobered
Okay.
up, and we checked that they weren't wanted
Yeah.
or anything. So,
Brilliant. So that was like exercising a duty of care to
absolutely,
the
yeah.
public. Okay, that's brilliant. And then, so did you find it quite a breeze to get through the first 18 months?
No, it was
No.
no, it was very very hard. It's the first sort of 10 weeks when before you go into your team, when you first get to this station, you get taught how to do all the basics. So that they teach you the law at Hendon, and then you go on the streets and they teach you actually how to do all the things that you'll need to do when you go onto the response
Okay.
team, which is when people call 999. That's the
Mm-hmm.
team that goes and turns up.
Yeah.
And that was really tough. There was one of the sergeants that was in charge of it, who's around the team, was,
Mm-hmm.
I can't put it too impolitely, but just a flat out bully, and he was really
Okay.
really nasty.
Okay. Okay. And you're a bully to the probationers.
Yes, and he particularly picked on me, possibly because I talk too much.
Okay. So you're one of those people. What did you talk back too much?
Well, no, it's just
Just talked.
I just didn't. I suppose I just didn't uh, fit in with the way he wanted things done, and
Okay.
to apologize every single time when
Right.
it was very clear that he wasn't, if you like, on my side. He was just
Yeah.
being nasty to people to show his, dominance over them.
Authority.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if you can remember your group then of the probationers, did all of you get through? Did some fail? How did that work?
Well, most of the ones if you get through Hendon, there's a
Yeah.
fairly good chance you'll get through the next sort of
Okay.
section of it. It tends to be because it is such a hard learning curve,
First,
steep learning curve,
okay.
and the shifts are very hard to deal with when you're dealing with shift work, and they're very
Mm,
long. And if you
okay.
arrest someone, sort of, you have to deal with them all the way through to the end of that process,
Oh, I
because they're
see.
your responsibility. So if that means 12 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours, that's what you do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. So you'd say that really if people are going to kind of drop out or fail, they'll fail at the Hendon stage, the first, was it 18 weeks?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
the sort of that kind of weed people out there who, when they give them a dose of what it's really like,
Okay.
they tend to drop out. But there were, so I think there was about, when I was there, about a 20% drop off rate out of at Hendon, and then possibly another 15% from the next 18 months, because, as I said, it's physically and mentally very tough. I mean, you
Mm,
deal with stuff. I mean, I remember one police officer, they turned up at what we call a sudden death, which is basically you go to a house where someone's not been seen for a while, you break in and you find them
okay.
deceased, and
Mm,
that person just couldn't deal with that, just walked away and said, "That's it."
okay. Was too much.
Mm.
And I know that through reading your book that I read about the times when you had to inform a family that there were a number of times you had to inform a family that a member of their family was deceased. And that I think it took its toll on many police officers, but it definitely took a toll on you. Can you just talk a little bit about those experiences, Richard?
Yeah, it's each one is different, and
Mm,
it's you get a whole range of different reactions to things. Sometimes anger, sometimes silence, sometimes
mm,
just such a strong reaction. Sometimes people weeping, and it's very hard to actually walk up to the front door
Mm,
and know that you're
yeah.
going to, destroy someone's life.
Yeah. It's like you're the Grim Reaper,
Yeah, yeah,
and you
and
know that once they open the door, what you've got to deliver.
yeah.
Okay. Sorry, carry on. So,
No, no, it's and
wow.
the process itself isn't always nice either. To actually take
Mm,
people to see their loved ones,
yes.
especially
Yes.
when they've died in a violent way, and
Yeah.
that's you know it's
Wow.
giving them the last memory of their loved one.
Yeah.
Is in a horrible situation.
Oh, it must be. It must have been absolutely awful. And
And
I think that, yeah, can carry on. Sorry.
it's a hard line to walk between showing empathy, which you obviously want to do,
Mm,
and
yeah,
not getting too personally involved in it, because then you can't do your job properly.
that's it, isn't it? So, is this something that through the training you're taught to kind of, you've got to keep that, like, don't get attached, don't get emotionally involved in the situations that you encounter? Is that something that's drilled into you? How are you trained to be able to do that, Richard?
Well, we did a little bit of role play on that, where you
Mm-hmm.
had you went up to a door when they had one of the instructors was there, and you had to deliver a certain message to them. But honestly, it's that you can tell people as much as you like, but when
Mm,
you actually have to do it, it's
yeah.
it's a different, and each situation is different. You
Yes.
a set of circumstances, and there is some training from the point of view role play, but honestly, there's no real preparation for that.
There's no preparation for that. And
No.
so when you have to, and I'm kind of picturing all the different aspects in your story that you'll have a day. How do your shifts work? So what would a typical shift be?
Well, certainly at that time, I think they've changed slightly. Now they do sort of slightly longer shifts, but less of them. What we used to do was we'd do a system of 5 weeks, where you'd have 8-hour shifts, and you'd have 7 nights on the trot, and then
Mm-hmm.
we used to do quick changeovers where we changed over to two lates, which are 2 till 10.
Okay.
So nights are
Okay.
10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Earlies are
Okay.
6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then
Okay.
lates are
Two till
2
ten.
10. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm imagining then, so if you were doing a 2 till 10, you're up in the morning doing your own personal things, and then you get to work, you start your shift at 2 p.m. And that day, it's not predict I suppose there are going to be some things that you're doing that you can predict, and then everything else is just as it happens. Is that how it works?
Well, yeah, there's the sort of the standard calls that you go to, the kind of fights and
Mm-hmm.
thefts and all these sorts of things. So
Mm-hmm.
the kind of bread and butter. But but there are other ones where you just turn up, and sometimes you'll go to a call where they tell you all hell is breaking loose, and you turn up and there's no one there, or you
Okay.
turn up to a call where there's a minor call, don't worry about it. You turn up, and
Mm-hmm. It's completely
literally you've got
different.
30, 40 people fighting with weapons, and there's two of you.
Wow. 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 So, on a day-to-day basis, there is a major risk to you in terms of injury, even, injury, for example, and physically and emotionally. So, I'm assuming in terms of physically, you had to keep fit, strong, um, and I suppose from your training, you learn how to safely restrain people. So, yeah, you had to keep fit, Richard.
Yes, yeah. The trouble for that is it's very easy to do that when you're doing sort of, well, it's not like easy, but it's easier to do when you're sort of doing a standard day.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to keep fit when you're doing shifts, there's
Oh,
certain days you
yes.
can't go to the gym at all, because if you're
Yeah.
working for certain shifts, you can't turn
Mm,
up in the middle of the night and want to go use the gym.
No, and I'm assuming you're going to be exhausted anyway, and emotionally, physically from your shift to even go to the gym,
And
be at the
also
gym in
you
the evening.
yeah, and also I mean the other thing is that often with stress you've got
Yeah.
there's a reaction to eat comfort food. You know, if you're feeling
Yeah, 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 I can imagine also. Okay, right. So I know, moving on, you've mentioned stress, but before we go on to that, because I know you had there was a stage in your police career where you had a nickname for the number of arrests that you made. I think it was per day or per month or whatever it was. What was that name again?
you mean Griefmeister?
Griefmeister. That's it. So who gave you that name?
It was
Your
one of
colleagues?
yeah, it was some of my colleagues.
Okay. And why did they give you that?
Um, well, there's probably a number of reasons, but it's a grief at the same at that sort of time there was Michael Schumacher, who they called the Rainmeister, who was
Yeah.
really good at dealing with the rain, and they gave me
Mm-hmm.
that nickname because I attracted all the grief, all
Grief.
the messy jobs, all the stuff that's
Yeah.
t- emotionally draining and difficult to deal with. And
Okay. Wow. And you attracted them.
yeah,
And I recall a scene, oh, I can see it in my mind from your book, where, and correct me all the way through. I could even be wrong, but this is my memory that you were working with, I think, a female officer, and you were dealing with one situation or one particular case, but then you kind of, I don't know, you kind of detoured to the right, and then you managed to make an arrest for something else while you were dealing with that. Have I got that correct?
yes, yeah. I mean, she was a probationer, and I got through my
That's right.
probation. I was sort of taking her out to show her the ropes, and she was
Yes.
not a huge lady in terms of physical stature, but she was
Mm-hmm.
full of enthusiasm, and which is great.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
we stopped at the petrol station to get the fuel the car up, and she said, "Why do they call you the Griefmeister?" And I said, "You'll
Mm.
find out. It's because I get
Mm-hmm.
all the, I find trouble." And
Right.
as we were pulling out the petrol station, a call came in saying there was a street robbery in progress just around the
Mm-hmm.
corner. So we
Mm-hmm.
drove around the corner, and right in
Mm.
front of us, running towards us, was a guy who just robbed a woman and had a purse in his hand, and there were people chasing him. So
Oh,
I
wow.
stopped the car. She jumped over the barrier and took him
Yeah.
out. Put her
Wow.
shoulder down and put her shoulder into his midriff and laid him down on the floor. And
Brilliant.
a good start actually. And
Brilliant
I
start.
managed to jump over the barrier, and between the two of us, we got him in. And
Mm,
she was she was very
mm,
very enthusiastic and very good. Which is all you really need. You need someone who knows what they're
yeah,
doing and gets stuck in and
and does what they've got to
arrest
do.
villains. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, did you enjoy the work then?
Yes and no. I loved in terms of, if you want to think of it this way, the highs are the highest I've ever experienced in my life. In terms of
Mm,
if you get something right and you
yes.
help people and you put a villain away who
Yeah,
needs you know dealing
he's
with
putting away.
because they've robbed someone or they've stabbed someone or they've hurt people or they've
Mm,
just a nasty piece of work who shouldn't be on the streets because
yeah,
they'll cause trouble for lots of people.
yes.
And arresting someone like that and putting them behind bars and feeling you've done a good day's work is
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. It's so
Mm,
amazing.
yeah.
But the lows are brutal. I mean, really brutal.
Brutal. Okay. And just give me an example. What would be a low?
Um,
If you've made a mistake?
yeah, but the hard point for me is if you make a mistake and people suffer for it because
Mm,
you've
yeah.
cocked something up, that's hard. But the hardest
Yeah.
thing I found, I think, was when you get something right and still there's a bad outcome. What do I
Okay.
mean by that? There was a guy who was suffering from mental illness, and he was
Mm,
very strong, very violent. And we
okay.
managed to get him into custody and get him into the hospital to
Yeah.
get him treatment, and we did everything by the book, and so did the hospital, but they let him
Okay.
out, and
Okay.
he went on to kill someone,
He
and
went on to kill someone. Yeah.
that's because the thing is that it's really hard to to have faith in a system where you do everything right and still
Mm,
the worst outcome comes along, and
yeah.
that's really hard to deal with.
Yeah. That is that is terrible. I mean, I'm familiar with in terms of mental health, familiar with a few cases, and even people connected to myself, where either people have been released and then they've gone on to take their own life,
Mm-hmm.
or as you said, that person went on and took someone else's life. But also cases where people have died in police cells when
Mm-hmm.
when it's been a mental health issue. And those stand out, situations around mental health stand out quite a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the role of the police in that, because I know that I'm a kind of an advocate for mental health awareness and how to keep loved ones safe, how to keep yourself safe. And one of the things that I advise is, if you think that there's a danger, there's a risk of someone else's safety or the individual's safety, they could harm themselves or someone else, you've got to phone. I will say, phone 999, get the police to come out, get an ambulance to come out. This person needs to go into somewhere safe, somewhere secure. And so there's quite an integral role in a police in the police's duty of care to people in terms of their mental health. I don't really know what I'm saying, but I'm saying just any of your thoughts around that, because I know that there is there, I mean, in terms of the duty of a police officer, as a police force, there is a duty of care, isn't there, for for the public, but also the individual that's suffering with the mental health.
Yeah,
Any
yeah,
thoughts on that?
so that there are so many incidents that I could go into that
Mm,
I put in the book, but
yeah.
and some of them I didn't. But you do have a duty to care too, but it's a very fine line that you
Mm.
don't want to take someone's
Liberty.
freedom and a liberty
Yeah.
away
Yeah.
unless it's absolutely necessary.
Necessary.
And it's a direct threat to themselves, their life, or someone else's life.
Okay.
Um,
And it's direct threat, isn't it? Yeah, I
yeah,
understand that as well. Okay. Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
it is.
It's and working with, I mean, the role of a police officer is working with people,
Mm.
and people are the most strange beasts you can ever
Oh,
encounter,
absolutely. Yeah,
And so, wow, it must have been so mentally taxing
mm.
to fulfill this role. And so, we've been talking about like mental health. So, how well are police officers taken care of with their mental health?
Certainly when I was in the police, there was some help available, but it
Hmm.
wasn't as recognised and um, and accepted as it is now, I think. And
Okay.
it's it's the hardest thing is actually to recognise in yourself,
Yeah.
because you work all these long, crazy hours and you deal with all sorts of horrible things, and
Mm.
it's almost like you put those things in a box at the back of your mind and you just carry on because, uh, but if you don't talk about it, I found this out that fairly
Yeah.
quickly with someone who gets it,
Yeah.
can actually listen. It
Yeah.
can build up, and when it does, that camel, the straw that broke the
Sure.
camel's back, can be the one that just causes you to really struggle with things.
Yeah. I hear that because it just builds and builds, and it's just you're doing your job. You're doing your job. Goes with the territory. You're doing your job, and probably not recognizing how stressed or depressed or anxious or how the job itself is impacting you.
Mm.
And until that straw, okay, okay. So how did you then leave? Why did you leave the police?
Well, I did suffer some injuries that are still ongoing today, physical injuries, but also there was I suffered what was diagnosed with was moderately severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress
PTSD.
disorder.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that, and this sounds very arrogant, but
Mm,
the attitude in place really was that you can deal with anything. You turn up, you deal with it. You just get your head down and you sort it out. No matter how
okay.
horrible and nasty and just messed up the whole
Yeah.
situation is, you can deal with it.
Okay. And
But
is that the attitude of the institution, or is that
yeah,
the attitude of the institution? Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
of the people within it, I don't know
People
what it's
within
like
it.
now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the problem I found was it's not the dealing with, it's the living with afterwards. It's
It's
how
living.
it sort of leaches out into the rest of your life.
Mm,
And
yeah. And when you
it sorry,
now I can imagine it's when you least expect it as well.
yeah, yeah. There
Yeah.
was a friend of one of the blokes I mentioned in the book that was at a
Mm,
really horrible rail disaster, and he was
mm,
going around picking up deceased people, and
hmm.
they had to pick up the phones, and they didn't want to answer them or turn them off because that would
No.
give someone a different ring, who was trying to
Okay.
contact them when that
Okay.
person isn't alive anymore. And
Yes.
this phone kept on going off, and
Mm.
when the guy got home, his wife had a new phone and it had that ringtone,
Oh my goodness.
and he lost it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Triggers. Just triggered.
Mm,
Triggered. Oh, that's so difficult.
yeah,
So difficult because, seeing just I suppose, and I don't know, this is out of curiosity now, but do you have targets? Would, would there be targets for arrests, or would there be targets or maybe specific, I don't know what to call it. Is it specific campaigns, specific, I don't know. Do you understand what I'm saying? Would you have that
yeah.
pressure of you've got to you've got to make sure you arrest this number of this, or you've got to make sure you do this, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, there's the what they call performance indicators, PIs,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
there are ones that you can be set one per year and say you've got to do this, you've got to do that. But that's an individual one, so that make 10 arrests or make whatever. But
Yeah.
um, which never sits well with most police officers I know, because
Mm,
it's artificial. You should deal with every situation as you see it. You shouldn't be
yeah.
feeling any pressure to arrest someone if they don't need to be arrested, because that's got to be your last
Yeah.
resort.
Yes.
Um, but the overall team responsibilities, if you like, are what they call clear ups, where you say someone reports a burglary, you attend the scene, you take forensic, and then you go and match it with someone. You go and arrest them, and you take them to court. And there's a crime. You've
Mm-hmm.
arrested someone. They've gone to court. So that's the sort of that's a resolution of the situation, and there are targets to try and get that done,
Right.
because that's
So
some of
yeah.
the targets the government sets for you to do certain things, so that you'll say, we want to reduce burglaries, we want to reduce
Yeah.
robberies,
Yeah.
we want to reduce street murders, what have you. So there are specific targets that they
Yeah.
have, and there
Yeah.
are campaigns that they put together to deal with that. But personally, because there's supposed to be autonomy between sort of a split between the policing doing doing what they see as their autonomous role away from politics, and then
Yeah.
the politicians set targets for them. And there is a problem with that, because if you are who's in charge of the police, or sort of in the management side of it, you see a certain set of crimes taking place, and you can deal with them, and someone else comes along who doesn't have that insight and tells you must do this. You know that by switching resources, you're going to allow one sort of crime to rise.
Right, I understand.
Managing resources and things.
Yeah. So that's a lot of pressure again, a lot of pressure. Okay, Richard, we're coming to the end of the interview. It's been great talking to you and getting a bit more meat, although it's all in the book. This is a 588-page fabulous memoir. I highly recommend it. And it is a page turner because I couldn't stop reading when I was reading. Richard, why did you write it, and who is this book for?
Well, something I've wanted to write because I wanted to firstly explain to my family and friends
Yeah.
why I am like it,
Yeah.
what happened, and secondly, I want people to see the human side of being a police officer and the effect it has on them, because sometimes people can get very frustrated with the police because they're not seeing, and they don't understand why the police do things in a certain way. And they get the and it's very easy to if it's a very easy, say for instance, if you only see the police when something bad happens, and the police officers only see people when bad things happen, because they go from the worst day in someone's life to the worst day in someone's life to the worst day in someone's life. And this can be a real disconnect there, and I wanted to try and bridge the gap a little bit and say, this is what it's like, folks.
Yes, fantastic. And just to give you an overview, have you ever wondered what it's like to put on a police uniform and step forward when everyone else steps back? I did, says Richard Armstrong, and this is my story based on my experiences doing the job. I tell you what it feels like when you get the tough calls right and when you get them wrong, and how it affected me. This book is not for the faint-hearted. You'll never look at the police in the same way again. Bulletproof Corset, One Man's Struggles in the Police by Richard Armstrong. Cover illustrated by Asher Fay, published through Marcia M Publishing House, is available. I'm just going to, if you just Google the book, or you can find it on Amazon, contact Marcia M Publishing House if you want to maybe get a signed copy. And I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Richard, I've really enjoyed talking to you again. It has been fantastic working with you. And hopefully you'll do a part 2 someday. And I'll give a quick shout out to the editor, Lee Dickinson. You did a great job. And listeners, I hope you enjoy the book. Richard, we've got to go. We've got places to go this evening, haven't we?
Yes.
Take good care.
You too. Thank you very much, Marcia.
Thank you. Take care. Right, I'll just stop the recording.